Anti-tilt? Why? I thought you'd never ask. You know what that means? Friday night is upon us. You all know the drill. Not the drill. On Friday nights, we have Gus-Talks, and Gus-Talks require 3 components. Good drink. That's a good start, right?
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
I appreciate it very much. I hope that what I can bring is worth your time, worth your consideration. All right, ingredient number 2, a nice cigar. Wow, Zenith, really? You guys, Zenith has just joined the group of capos. That is, wow. I just got alerts for Patreon, and I didn't know if they were working. Nope, my alerts are broken. Like an idiot. Regretting that now, aren't you? Zenith, thank you. All right, Joker's absolutely right. It takes us an hour to get through 3 ingredients. Number 1, good drink. Number 2, good smoke. And number 3, if you'll kindly oblige, good company. Pull up a comfortable chair, grab a good drink, come, let us reason together. We've got an amazing topic here tonight, if I do say so myself. It's an incredibly important one. It's something that absolutely pertains to each and every one of us. And I thank you for being here for it. It means an awful lot to you, friends. Cheers. All right. As ever with my talks, a caveat to this, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist except for an amateur one. I have studied many things and traveled to many places and done a lot of jobs and lived a lot of life, but I am by no means an expert in everything. As ever, I will encourage you guys, don't take my word for it. Do your homework. Double check. Call me out if I'm wrong. Let me know if these things jive with your experiences so far, if there are parallels, or if you've seen something different. I'd love to hear you guys' experiences. All right, topic tonight has a very fancy schmancy name, but I suspect that every single one of you will be able to identify with tonight's talk, even if you've never heard its name. The online disinhibition effect. Fancy words for who we are at a distance. The formal name for this thing was put forth in a research paper in 2004 by a gentleman by the name of John Suhler, a psychology professor at Rider University. This was defined by this gentleman as loosening the psychological barriers against inner feelings and needs, regardless of whether they are benign or toxic. This is something that affects everybody, but it affects us each in different amounts. According to the research, this affects people to varying degrees and in varying ways, and that depends on your disposition at the outset. Who you are going into this thing will affect how affected you are by it. As you spend time in this world, as you spend time subjected to these forces, the quality, the content, and the depth of one's character, what you're anchored in, your integrity matters. That's a big part of it to understand here. So, disinhibition basically means that who you present yourself to be changes depending on your proximity to the recipient of that presentation. Put another way, if you're chatting with somebody face to face, you will often, these days, we will be a different person in action and behavior than you would be here online. That's the posit of this thing. That's the topic of tonight's talk. So the disinhibition happens with distance, and I will be explaining how proximity proportionately affects the effects. All right, so that's the basics. Now we're going to talk about the factors. The things that lead to that disinhibition are these elements. Number 1, disassociative anonymity. This is the first aspect of it. Number 2 is invisibility. 3, asynchronicity, solipsistic introjection. Dissociative imagination is number 5. Number 6, perceived privacy. Number 7, attenuated status and authority. And finally, number 8, social facilitation. Those are the things. We've got ground to cover, and I'm gonna cover it, baby. Brain hurts already. Karma, you'll be fine. I got you. So, disassociative anonymity. The assumption, while you're behind a screen, you don't know me. All right? Due to the inherent anonymity of the internet, one's true identity is easily altered or hidden entirely. Resultantly, we might perceive our actions online as separate from those of our in-person IRL self. Dissociative anonymity is this tendency for those of us behind a screen to say, well, I'm just a random person in chat on someone's stream. I don't have my camera on. They don't hear my voice. I'm behind an avatar. I've got a username. My handle doesn't really betray anything about me necessarily. I'm relatively anonymous. What does this look like practically? It's really easy to understand. There are a bunch of things we would never do IRL because of how it would make us look or feel. But because we have this perceived anonymity online, or, if you're really working hard to make yourself truly anonymous online, this true anonymity, we will do them there. We will do them from the safety of our mouse and keyboard. Things we would never do in person. Let your mind wander to the various things that we get up to. Watching Twitch streams, partaking in chat, playing video games, headset or no. Think about the things that we get up to because we're hidden. Dissociative anonymity. You'll see how all these piece together. They're puzzle pieces that comprise the whole of this disinhibition, all right? Number 2, invisibility. This is, you can't see me. In real life, we humans rely heavily on cues from our IRL counterparts in conversation to regulate our behavior and our actions during that interaction. This makes sense intuitively to us as well. You guys know this. Hello? Are you done? That's what I thought. Don't you sass me. I was talking. Wait. Like a child. Leave it alone for 2 seconds and it dies. Ridiculous. In real life, we rely heavily on this. Eye contact, hand gestures, movements, quirks, cringes, twinges, turns, looks, fidgets, all of that. We as humans are designed to interact this way. That's body language. I'm not trying to insult anyone's intelligence by expounding upon it here, but body language is a language. We each speak it. Some better than others, yes. Some of us lack social cues. Some of you out there have a hard time reading people. Some of you intuit incredibly well. I'm a real big fan of trying my utmost to intuit well. I don't always nail it, but by golly, it is absolutely worth my effort to try to intuit well. So, you guys have heard of mirroring, right? You guys know instinctively, especially if you know how to intuit well, how a conversation's going. If the other person feels awkward, threatened, scared, nervous, apprehensive, angry, happy, delighted, shy, we can do that with body language. Now here, the beauty of this thing is that I now have this fancy schmancy camera as of a week ago. It's still not fancy schmancy, but it's fancier and schmancier than the lousy one I had before. Am I wrong? The beauty of this is you guys get to see. On Tuesdays, what do you see? Which version of Gus do you get to see? Even if I was muted, even if my microphone was off, which it embarrassingly wouldn't be the first time, which version of me do you get to see on Tuesdays? Visually. Tilty Gus. Exactly. 4K Gus. Yeah. I'd say cross your fingers, but don't hold your breath. Tilty Gus. And you can see it right away because I have a camera. Because while I'm playing Apex, you guys can see the subtle changes in my behavior. I will start the night, probably jubilant, probably a little bit ridiculous, probably pretty excited to get to it. I'll have my anti-tilt in hand, hopeful for the night, right? And then the first couple games happen. You can read me and watch me as I move toward tilted. You can see my change in behaviors and attitudes, perceptions and feelings. You can see all of that. This is super important in human interaction. And when we're like this, it's a one-way thing. I can't see how you guys are perceiving the things that I'm saying. I don't know. And there's a bunch to be said about how we can use things in chat to communicate nuance when we're not seeing one another face to face. There are things that we can use, but they're no substitute for the real thing. No substitute like having a face to face. So we rely heavily on these cues from one another. Online, we don't have those. A study by Lapido, Leffler, and Barak in 2012 found that the lack of eye contact, exactly what I'm talking about here, in online interaction contributed significantly to the presence of flaming behavior. Isn't it funny that they called it flaming behavior? Remember, this is 2012, and these are stuffy old researchers. They don't know these things, but you know what we're talking about here. This is swearing, being generally hostile. Any of you who've ever played Call of Duty and have had proximity chat on, you know what this is. Lack of eye contact has been demonstrated to be a significant contributor to that behavior. Just lack of eye contact. That's a huge implication. Number 3 is asynchronicity. I heard it described once as an emotional hit and run. Asynchronicity. Often here in email, in all of these other things, when we receive a message, we don't reply to it in real time, often. Furthermore, we don't treat it as if it needs to be. We don't treat it as if it needs to be replied to in real time. You receive a text, you don't necessarily immediately have to respond because it's a bundle of text sitting on your screen. It's not a human being standing face to face with you, asking you a question. If it's a person who walked up to you and said, "How was your day?" Would you go, maybe do some texting? My day was all right. When we're face to face, we intuitively understand that this person is communicating to us and it requires a response now. Behind a screen, not so much. It doesn't need to be right this minute. It can wait. It's text, not a person. It also means that we don't have to be around. Send an email, send a Discord message to somebody who's offline, Steam message, pick your medium, all right? We don't have to be around, literally and figuratively, when the recipient of our correspondence receives it, which means we aren't subjected to whatever reactions they have, good or bad, in the immediacy of their having received it. What if their immediate reaction is anger? It doesn't matter to you, you're not there for it. That's why this was colloquially put, this asynchronicity, as an emotional hit and run. You do the damage and you're gone by the time it's realized, by the time someone has anything to say about it. Asynchronicity. Okay, next one is solipsistic introjection. This is a fun one. The dearth of my knowledge on this was to my own detriment for years, ages, it seems. And when I learned about it and put to practice that knowledge, it changed. And I mean this not as hyperbole, but literally, it changed my entire life. So, what is this solipsistic introjection? The gist is we begin to invent a caricature of the person with whom we are interacting, forgetting that they are a real person with real needs and real emotions and a real life. We caricaturize those who aren't us. The same thing happens online. That person on Reddit who said that thing, they're just a moron, or they're just some troll. What does that troll look like to you? Or, here's a better example, perhaps more apt for my gaming friends out here. What does that sweat look like? If you had to describe physically the sweat who did a wall bounce 360 no scope, dropped you faster than you could see what was happening, and then teabagged your box. If you had to physically describe the person behind the mouse and key who did that to you on the other end, how would you describe that sweat, as we call them? Any adjectives come to mind? What's another word we have for sweats around the gaming world, huh? We call them no-lifers, right? No-lifes? Why do we call them that? No-lifes, they just no-life this game. They sit there and they live in their mom's basement, playing in their underwear, eating their Hot Packets, and playing Apex, right? No real life experience, they just sit here and play this game. that true? It's possible, but is it true? Is every single person who's ever beaten me in a video game that guy? No. And yet, we caricaturize them because we can. It's uncharitable at best. And I'm guilty of it myself. And that goes for so many of the things we're talking about tonight. Guilty as charged. I'm not here exempt from these things, as I suspect few, if any of us are. Again, I don't think any of us are. Number 5 is disassociative imagination. It's just a game. My online life, the whole thing's a game. All of it. Twitch, Reddit, Reddit, TikTok, YouTube, Discord, in-game, wherever you are, it's a game. Folks begin to perceive the online world as an imaginary one, filled with imaginary people and places, none of which require the same level of humaning as real life. Think about Reddit for a moment. There is a whole subculture of norms just within Reddit that absolutely would not fit or be displayed IRL. Think about the trolling that happens on Reddit. How appropriate is any of that in a real life interaction? How would anyone fare if they behaved in person with colleagues, fellow students, their boss, like they did in a Reddit thread? Why do they behave that way on Reddit? Because Reddit's not real. Reddit's not the real world. It's Reddit. Come now. Or we're playing Apex, or we're playing any of these other games, and there's in-game chat. Why do you need to interact like you would in real life, right? I'm here to play video games and unplug from the world and unwind. Why must I be bound by the norms that I have to abide in my workaday? No, indeed, we unplug. What do we plug into? A fake world. An imaginary one. Again, varying degrees, your mileage may vary, but online? Well, that's not real life. Who are you online? Who's your avatar? What is your handle? We often don't use our real names. Why? Why aren't the two inextricably linked? We don't want them to be. We don't choose for them to be. And often we don't, therefore, see them to be. The next is perceived privacy. This one, it speaks for itself. It's just between you and me, right? Think, again, online interactions. Think Discord DMs. Chat in-game with just your team. Think about those things. When you hear someone say something like, I can't believe that they would do such a thing in public. What do you think? Town square, the mall, I don't know, in the street. Because they're not in public, they are therefore private. Others aren't listening, others aren't watching, others aren't recording. No one's listening into this thing. We meme about it all the time, but we live as if we're the only two people here. That's a fascinating thing. And again, it could be an entire topic unto itself. This makes us predictably bolder, for better or worse. We become bolder by the keyboard. We say things that we think won't come back to us. Think Snapchat, especially before the companion thing was added where you could save Snapchats. You'd set it and it would disappear, gone forever. Think about what Snapchat did to us as humans. Well, it's just between you and me, and it's about to disappear. Snapchat's not keeping it in servers somewhere. No, they're not recording everything for posterity in massive data dumps. No. What I send on Snapchat goes one way and it's gone for all of time. Just you and me. Right? Right? Number 7, attenuated status and authority. What does that mean? It means we're equals. Equals. Fascinating. When separated by the internet, things like people's wealth and social status, they're not readily apparent, are they? The research suggests that this makes the default setting that we have online one of equality. That's our default. We can change that. Depends on your person, depends on your character, depends on the level of integrity to which you cling. Integrity. The topic of our very first talk on this channel for this very reason. If our default setting is equality, it means that everybody that you interact with online, in whatever form that takes, is a peer. Not someone who's 20 years your senior and who's done far more than you in life. No. Not someone who's run businesses, hired and fired people, run payroll, changed politics by litigating, writing bills, founded NGOs that have shaped countries, chaired charities, and have helped shape lives. No. Every single person with whom you interact is a peer. Think of the implications of that. Because everyone is perceived to be, more or less, your equal, we're more likely to act out or misbehave, says the research. There's no adults in the room. Whatever age you are, however you perceive yourself, you project that onto all the other faceless names, faceless handles, and avatars. You equivocate your experience to theirs. If they speak to something with authority and conviction and detailed analysis, your immediate reaction is not, wow, this person is wizened beyond my years. By golly, I'll bet you they have a job in the private sector that speaks to exactly this thing. Perhaps I ought to temper my words, my thoughts and feelings, and my perceptions of things here in this thread, here in this interaction, based on this new knowledge. No, you dismiss them as a hack. You say, oh, they looked that up. That's just some copy pasta that's not theirs. It's too astute for them. No, ridiculous. Go back to your cave, troll. They're peers. And number 8, finally, social facilitation. Everyone else thinks it's okay. This one also speaks for itself. If everyone's doing something online in this space, it's normalized for us, and we are thus disinhibited from partaking in activities or behaviors that, again, in real life, we would never. Everyone else does this thing online. Why shouldn't I? It's normal. In fact, what's not normal is not doing what everybody else is doing. Those are the things. Those are the 8 parts of this. These are all factors that build to the online disinhibition effect. Disassociative anonymity. You don't know me. I'm an anonymous person online. I can be whomever I want to be. Invisibility. You can't see me, and so I get to hide from the reaction that you would give me if this were a face-to-face thing. You don't need to see my actual reactions to this thing. You'll get my tailored, custom-made, photoshopped response. Asynchronicity. This is, again, you're not there right when it happens, so you don't need to live with all of those things that happen in real time. Solipsistic introjection. Caricaturization of what are actually humans on the other end of this, but whom you change to fit your narrative. Disassociative imagination. Online world is a game. It's not to be equivocated with real life. Who I am online is separate from who I am when I clock in at work. Number 6 was perceived privacy. Again, we're online. It's just the two of us. This is just between us. Number 7 is attenuated status and authority. We're equals, you and I. We're just the same, even if I am a 16-year-old know-nothing. Everyone is a 16-year-old know-nothing. And finally, social facilitation. Everyone thinks this way, and everyone says it's fine, so it is fine. You guys have now done me the courtesy. You've partitioned your thinking about this to just the internet and your online interactions thereon. Yes, I know a bunch of you have done what Joker has done and extrapolated this to fields outside of the interwebs, but I invite you to consider one that perhaps you didn't. And if you did, do let me know. If in the course of me saying all of this, this particular medium came to mind, because this is something that I have to police myself with all of the time. You guys' comment earlier about maybe this is the fake Gus and in real life he's a mean-spirited person. I invite you to consider driving. If instantly a bunch of images flashed to mind about your driving life, your commute, your interactions with other humans through a windshield, then perhaps indeed you will think anti-tilt is necessary. Or perhaps you will think yourself innocent. Who, me? No. Behind the wheel? No, I'm an angel behind the wheel. Most evil and cynical when driving. Jen? That makes two of us. And if, Joker, your immediate response is, no, Gus is his most evil and cynical, the literal worst when he's playing Apex, you haven't seen me drive, my friend. It takes an inordinate amount of my effort, intentional energy to be kind to other humans when I'm driving. Think about this. How many times have you, behind the wheel, yelled something at someone else out loud? How many times have you yelled at someone? Called them a name? How often do you disparage others? Daily? During your commute? Learn to drive. What are you doing? Pay attention. Terrible drivers. Blinkers exist. There's a speed limit and you're 10 under it. Why? Why do we feel that we can do that? Think of an expletive that you've let forth from your pie hole the last time you were driving and got behind someone who was going 10 under the speed limit. And indulge me in this. Now picture you and that person are walking on the sidewalk together. Would you say those things to the person walking? You may experience walking road rage, but do you shout out loud, "Learn to walk"? Are you kidding me? This sidewalk is wide enough for 4 people, and somehow you've made it the case that you and your friend are taking up the whole thing. We really have the possibility here for 2 of us to be going this way and 2 people to be going this way. And you 2 decided to park yourselves right smack dab in the middle. So I have to go down into the curb to get around you. When was the last time you shouted that out loud at those middle-aged women doing that thing? You may have thought those things, but have you verbally expressed those things with the same freeness that you would in a car? This example, this walking example, absurd though it may be, has nuance. What if you're riding a bike and they're walking? Might you yell something about them being on the wrong side of the path? You might. Why? Because you're zooming by on a bicycle and you soon won't be there. This is the asynchronization. By the time they get to respond to you, you're all the way over here. You don't care what they think. You're not going to be around to see the aftermath of what you said. That is already different than you looking them in the eyes and saying something. There is already distance. This is the point of tonight's talk. Proximity does this. It's not the internet, it's proximity. I have to develop this much more and in ways that I am certain that you guys have not explored before, because it pertains to my field of expertise. Things will indeed here get dark, my friends. That is a forewarning for what's to come. But it will prove my point. It will demonstrate what I am after, and I think it will leave a meaningful impact. And I think it will be a valuable thing for you to understand, as I think it would be a valuable thing for just about everyone to understand. It might not be directly applicable in the explicit form that I presented in to your world, but it will be applicable, that I can promise you. I invite you to consider the implications of the thing that I just laid out with driving. Behind the windshield, we are often a very different person than the one we'd be face to face, looking into someone's eyes, another human. Why? Because when we're driving, others aren't people to us, they're objects to us. They're cars, they're obstacles, they're impediments to where we're going. They are always perceived as worse at this than us, right? Here's a fun fact for you. In my work, I was literally certified to be an expert driver in both offense and defensive driving. I am literally an expert driver. How do you think that makes me perceive of everyone else on the road? How do you think I feel about other people driving less than perfectly, with less than perfect efficiency, less than perfect intuiting, less than perfect communication? Something I say all the time when they do a blind turn with no blinkers is I say, "Well, thank you, friend, very much for using the only means of communication that we have with one another to indicate your intentions so that I could adjust mine accordingly." Facetiousness. Use your blinkers, friends. You're not the only one on the road. If this is the first time that you've been told you're not the only human on the road, good morning. Welcome. You're not It's true. I'm also on the road. We perceive others as objects, and then we treat them like they're objects. Not like they're other people, worthy of our consideration, worthy of our respect, worthy of our patience. The same thing that we do online. There are 1,000 examples of mediums that physically separate us from the other humans with whom we are interacting. There are so many ways that physically separate us from accountability. Because ultimately, that's what this face-to-face is. What this look the other person in the eyes and exchange words is. It's accountability. When we're talking with somebody face-to-face, the age difference is apparent. Their rank, their status, all of that becomes part of the conversation. And if you have functioning social cues, and I know that some people don't, you tailor that interaction according to what you know, to what you perceive. This person is no longer an object to you. They're a person with whom you must negotiate. You don't negotiate with objects. Even if you dislike this person, even if you distrust this person, they are what was the key word in what I just said? Person. And that changes absolutely everything. Some of you are of an age where you will understand this example and know exactly where I'm going with this. Others of you will perhaps not, but apply the example to a medium of your choosing that was from your first experiences online, and I think you will find them to be analogous. How many of you, this is not a rhetorical question, this is a real question, how many of you used AOL Instant Messenger? Anyone? I suspect there may be a one or a twos of you. Dear God. That's right, joke. Bringing out the big guns tonight. We're rewinding the tape. I think I still have some free AOL discs around here. I don't, and that makes me sad. Just for, like, archiving history. Just for posterity. I'd love to have them. Alright. I wonder if any of you had the same experience that I did. Let me tell you a tale. When I was young, I was very shy, especially around girls. I had a bunch of friends. I was the popular sort who could sort of blend into any group. And in middle school and high school, I did. I was familiar with basically every clique that there was on campus, especially once we got into high school. Every single person knew who I was. All of that said, I was terribly shy, especially with girls. I had no self-confidence. I started training with the Marines, and yes, I had a bunch of self-confidence, but around what? Training to be a Marine does not a socially graceful human make you. Ask Karma. It doesn't do that. I was terribly shy around girls. I hope that I never forget the lessons of this time of my life, of my adolescence, of my development. Embarrassing though they are integral to me understanding tonight's topic. Being able to have an empathy and understanding, a first-hand knowledge of this thing that I present to you here tonight. I still remember to this day the girl that I crushed on so hard. I thought she was beautiful. I'll never forget her. Her name was Claire. Beauty is subjective, right? But she was, to many people, yes, stunning, and many people treated her like an object. I thought she was stunning, and I thought she had a personality to match, and I was paralyzed into never telling her that. Would that I could go back in time, walk up to her, and say the things that I can now say in person to people, and tell her that she's remarkable, with no ulterior motive, with no plans, no designs, just she's remarkable, and I've noticed. And I noticed how much effort she put into her hair, how sweet and kind she was, and so forth. And I never said any of those things to her. Never. I hope she heard it from someone. Someone braver than me. Do you guys remember? I think they still have these. The big Hershey's Kisses. I bought one of those. I had never exchanged meaningful words with her before. Do you think I gave it to her? Nope. No, I chickened out. That was the last day of middle school. I threw that chocolate away. I bought that with my money and I wanted to do this thing. And I chickened out. If we have kids, if the hot bride and I have children, I am gonna be so intentional about teaching them to critically think and to be brave, to exercise bravery, to exercise it. It's a muscle, and we have to exercise it. The key part of that story is I never talked to her. I never even tried. Instead, I raised the stakes until they were so high. And then what? I'm expected to rise to the occasion? No, I didn't give her that gift. It was a very important lesson. That paints a pretty good picture of who I was going into this. Change scene, enter stage left, AOL Instant Messenger. I will never forget the things that I said to girls hidden away across town from these girls. The things that I put in text surprise me even today. I found the same thing that a bunch of you did. The safety of anonymity. It's not even anonymity. It's just proximity. I submit to you that all of this research that shows that these things are due to our online presence, that these things are strictly tied to this medium with which we are using to communicate right now, I submit to you that it's not limited to just that it is proximity based. And again, I have an example coming that I think will change your lives, or at least how you see things. AOL Instant Messenger was distance. Those of you who've been here tonight will know that there were elements of this thing missing in that. In Instant Messenger, it's just chat. It's purely text. What's missing? This. So many of the things that we went over tonight, so many of the factors that build to an online disinhibition, disassociative anonymity. Oh, it's me online. Oh, I'm a persona. Invisibility, you can't see me. It's true. These girls with whom I interacted, they could not see me. Nervously fidgeting over my words. Actually, I wasn't nervously fidgeting over my words. I was calm, cool, collected. Why? Because there wasn't a girl in the room. It was me, a lousy old PC with dial-up internet, and a text box. There was no human in the room. It's a game. It's online. Who I am online is separate from real life. But you know what? That came kind of crashing down a little while later. Do you think when I was at school the next day, after sending all of that inappropriate stuff, do you think that I sauntered up to them and said those same things? Do you think I walked right up to them with my newfound bravery, my newfound courage, and said the sorts of things that I typed to them? Of course not. Who was I online? Was I myself? Was I me? Who I was online and who I was at school were two different people, and I didn't know that yet. And yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll tell you this part of the story. I sauntered up to him and I went, and I walked away. Our in-person interactions were so painfully awkward, it boggles the mind. I learned that day exactly the meat and potatoes of this topic here tonight. I learned exactly what it means to be safe behind a screen and how that compares to a face-to-face. Eventually, I got to the point where I could interact with girls. But in the beginning, my experience with them was thus. I learned what I was capable of. Much to Suki's point, I learned how I could see, that is, caricaturize, and treat another human being when I was distanced from them. How do you think I started to perceive myself when this happened? When it started online, I thought, I'm amazing. Oh my, I can do anything. I said that? Who am I? Me? If I was able to say that, what can't I do? The world is my oyster. I can do anything now. I might as well try flying while I'm at it. Look at me, talking to girls like that. I learned the substance of tonight's talk when I was in high school, but I didn't understand all of it. I didn't understand the extent to which this applied to the rest of life. And that's the place I'm going to go next with this, friends. This is where I ask you to buckle up. I don't like to discuss these things unless it is important, and it is here important. It turns out that a lot of our behavior is regulated by proximity. I have 2 books down here on the shelf behind me. They're called On Combat and On Killing. It's research that was done by a Lieutenant Colonel Grossman. It's not exactly light reading, and its applicability is somewhat narrow. Your mileage may vary. Those of you who have done the life that I have and have been in the military, it's specifically applicable to you. However, I submit to you here tonight that its contents tie directly into what we've been talking about over the course of this talk. Proximity. That's the key word here tonight. Proximity. I don't think it's the medium, I think it's proximity. It happens that the proximity with the internet, it's limitless. You think the person you're talking to you will never see in a million years, and the chances are you wouldn't. Turns out they're your next door neighbor. What are the odds? Doesn't matter. You're not going to talk to your neighbor about your online interactions, so they might as well be a million miles away. The internet is the ultimate distancing yourself from other people. It is a feature of this thing that I am here with this project endeavoring to minimize. The whole point of the Mafia Discord is that we might, despite the medium, do life together. I want to do this thing in a way that impacts us, that we can say, I knew him and he was a friend. That's why this is difficult. The proximity. In these books, specifically the first one, it's called On Killing. The history of man killing man is examined in great detail. Detail that would make many people uncomfortable, but I think it is worth here exploring. One of the takeaways is that we human beings cannot stand killing other human beings. We have a literal, physical resistance to it. We are repulsed by the act. It's not to say that there are not sociopaths and psychopaths out there. These are real conditions that create a lack of empathy, and that lack of empathy directly associates with all of the things that we've talked about tonight. It's like you have that distance from others, even when you're face to face. It's like you're behind the safety and anonymity of the mouse and key, even when you're looking them in the eyes. That is a oversimplification, yes, but I think a worthy description. You don't empathize. You look into the eyes of the person and it means nothing to you, or it means less to you. There are degrees of this thing. You may have thought to yourself before, I could kill, and you'd be shocked to find out that the same principles of practice, strange though that may sound to many of you civilians, practice here applies. When I said before, you need to practice things because you will not rise to the occasion, you will fall back on your training. The exact same thing happens, it turns out, when it comes to killing another human being. Unless you have practiced killing another human being, you won't do it. You'll freeze, you'll pause, you will self-regulate. That is why we, Marines, are brainwashed. We are conditioned, we are trained to do this thing, so that the training that we fall back on is, yes, to do that thing because it's our job. It turns out every single person who takes a life who is not mentally other, who is not mentally inhibited otherwise, again, sociopathy and psychopathy, will be affected by taking the life of another human being. We simply are. This is the nature of the thing. When you take a human life, you are inexorably altered. You are affected by it, whether or not you've trained for it. You can now do it, but you will be affected by it. We are trained, we are brainwashed, we are prepared for this thing, but not for the aftermath. They train you to pull the trigger, but they don't train you for what comes after. We are affected, but we are not equally affected. So what's our word for the day? Proximity. That's what the research concludes. One's proximity to the act determines the extent to which we are affected by it. The farther away you are from the act, the less affected you are by it. It is scaled. Like, you can chart this. If you're on a battleship offshore, you're in the Navy, say you're a squid working the guns, and you get over the radio from a bunch of grunts on the ground, and they call in a strike. I will say on the radio, and what you on the Navy battleship offshore will hear is fire for effect, over. Fire for effect, out. Splash over, splash out. Hellfire, this is Godfather. Good effects on target. Estimate 6 EKIA. Mark target, out. Okay? If you're in a Navy battery, offshore somewhere, and you loaded those shells, or you fired those shells, and you hear over the comms, I estimated 6 enemy dead. You will be affected by it, but minimally. All you did was load some shells into their tubes, you fired them, good job, you heard from the thing, and you go back to eating lunch. You may later reflect on the fact that you have now taken human lives, that you did. You were in the chain of custody, so to speak, for that. Move it forward. Now you're a sniper. A sniper is pretty darned effective at range, but you're especially effective at like 600 yards or closer, okay? Yeah, you can work at 1,000, but you're especially deadly and you're especially effective within these certain range, okay? When a sniper takes a shot, they're looking through an optic, or they have a spotter who's doing that for them. They make the adjustments, and that team fires that shot, and they call the kill. They may confirm it later, but they see that person drop, and they know that their shot was a good one. They will be affected by that thing. Their distance to it, though, still protects them. They will be affected by that action, but it may not cripple them. Depends on the person, yes. But the research has shown that sniper will be affected more than the artillery folk, or the Navy folk, or the Air Force folk, or the drone folk. All right, now get closer. Now you're me. Now you're a grunt, a Marine Corps grunt. On the ground with an M4, a lousy Beretta 9, maybe you have a 203, maybe you have a saw. You will be more affected in taking those lives than the sniper was. Proximity. I see the people. I take the shots, I see the people fall. My brain will catalog this moment away for basically all of time. Now I'm in close. Now I'm one of those poor, heroic souls who fought in a lot of close quarters. Now I'm in Fallujah. This is my specialty, is MOUT, military ops in urban terrain. That was my job. And you switch to your sidearm, and you expend that on people 10 yards from you, and you switch to your knife. The people who've had to kill somebody at the point of a blade, that proximity, our word for tonight in discussing this whole matter, is all important. If you are so close that you have to kill somebody with a knife, this moment will change you. It will affect you for the rest of your days. Now there's no mistaking this. There is no, well, it could have been any. We fired some shells and there was effects, and yeah, there were some fireworks on the other end of it. And yeah, they said EKIA, and yeah, we've got confirmed kills, and hooray, good for us, I guess, less bad guys. Now, this is another person across from you. And the research here is very clear. Now there's no mistaking the thing that you're doing. There's no minimizing it. The thing that you did is its ultimate form now. This is it. It doesn't get worse than this. It doesn't get harder than this. And it doesn't affect somebody worse than this. I submit to you here, friends, tonight, that the exact same thing is true of our online interactions. I joked earlier that you wouldn't say the things you say while driving if you were walking with someone on the sidewalk to passersby. Why? Because they're there now. If you're walking down that sidewalk and you yell at somebody, hey, what are you doing? You're in the middle of the sidewalk. sidewalk. There's room for everybody here and you're hogging all the space. What's the danger? That you wouldn't face in the car shouting to nobody? The danger is you might get clocked in the face, but then you're driving. Now you're behind a windshield. Now they can't hear you yelling and screaming. Get good, learn how to drive. What are you doing on the road? You separate yourself from this act. What about the internet? What happens when we're separated by thousands of miles? What if they're on the other side of the world? What if they're 10 time zones away from you? You will never see them. It's a mathematical impossibility that you will ever run into this person. Ever. Think of what we're capable of. What did I posit earlier? What is this proximity defining? Our distance to what? Our nearness to what? What was that word? Accountability. When we're online and there is no feasible way that we will run into these people again, we're capable of anything. Terrible things. In tying all this together, everywhere we've gone tonight, your proximity to a thing is what will hold you accountable. It's what will regulate your behaviors. When we're online, it is the ultimate extrapolation of this idea. It is this taken to its logical conclusion. How close are you to that person on Reddit that you are going to bash and belittle and disparage? Not close at all. The odds of you ever running into this person ever are effectively zero. They might as well be on Mars, which means you can do anything. You can be anyone. Proximity will hold us accountable or not. Any medium that moves us away from those with whom we would interact lowers our accountability and it disinhibits our behavior. It doesn't need to be war, doesn't need to be killing. What we do online is interacting, is humaning, and the quality of that humaning, the content of it, the intent, the purpose, the express need of that interaction, what we do with that. We're disinhibited by this medium. We start apprehensive. In school, we start apprehensive until we find a hack to not be. With the military, we do the same thing. With online interactions, we do the same thing. We have a bunch of reservations about interacting with people in certain ways. But the longer we stay in this, the longer we see others do it, the longer we stay removed from human interaction, body language and all, in close, intimate proximity, the more disinhibited we get. All of what regulates us IRL ceases to do so at a distance. My posit tonight was that the internet is the conclusion of that. The logical conclusion. This taken to its extremes. We are removed from one another, and therefore we can be anyone. And the anyone that we choose to be is capable of anything. In itself, that might sound wholly negative. It isn't. It is a neutral declaration of facts. As I said at tonight's outset, it will depend largely upon who you are going into these interactions, going into this space where you are indeed saturated by these factors that lead to disinhibition. If you are sure of who you are, if you are certain of your identity, and if you cling to those things as something worth clinging to, you may yet preserve who you are in those interactions. If you are not, you are like a boat at sea, cast about by the waves, and you will likely become one of those sort who are influenced by this space and made to behave in a way perhaps unbecoming of who you are in person. Perhaps not. Depends on who you are. It depends on the level of your convictions, the roots of them, how deep do they go. We have a choice, each of us. Who you choose to be is up to you. You will be influenced by these things. How much will depend on you. You can give way to it and become a monster, or you can be yourself. You can choose to practice integrity. That word, that all-important word that we started all of these talks with. Being the same person in all circumstances. That's what integrity means. It means whole. To not be fractious. To be the person you are here and the same person when you interact with somebody face to face. I will finish with a final quote by one Gary Crawford, a professor of sociology at the University of Salford in England. He said, "To some extent, people are still figuring out what is appropriate and acceptable on the internet. However, in doing so, people draw on and adapt existing and related frames of reference and patterns of behavior. For example, it has always been easier to be bold or blunt in a letter than it is in face-to-face communication. At a distance, we can be somebody else that it's harder to be up close. My invitation to you, my challenge to you, and the challenge that I always have for my community, the Mafia Discord community, if you're not a part of it, you could do far worse. My challenge to those in that community is to be a person of integrity, to be the same person here in chat that you would be with me in voice chat, that you would be with me in a video call, that you would be with me if I'm privileged enough to shake your hand. It's a worthy endeavor. I strive for it to be the case that the person you see here is exactly who you'd meet. And you can ask Ryan, you can ask Gohan, and some of the others of you that I've had the privilege of having actually gotten to shake your hands. But that is who they get to meet. Suit and all, cigar and all, is my sincere hope that I get to shake more hands. Look at Patreon, please. What? Thumper! Thumper. You guys, Thumper just upped her patronage to family. That is... Thank you. For your being easily one of the most consistent diehards of this whole endeavor. And now for your doing this thing. I'm truly grateful. Cheers. Family takes on many forms. We've proven that with what we've already done here. I thank you guys like crazy for being here tonight, for your thoughts, for your sharing, for your being a part of this endeavor. This difficult endeavor. It's hard, and you choose to do it anyways. That sets you apart. That already is a distinction between you and very many others. I'm continually humbled by your being here and by your partaking in this thing. Those of you in the Discord for welcoming in our new joins, for making this truly a family. As we close here tonight, it is apt for me to point out that I have intention behind all of this, that I have an ethic behind all of this. My effort is to make meaningful content in all of the streams, in all of the videos that I get to finally edit, and in all of the things I'm learning to do something meaningful because you're meaningful. To make content that matters because you matter. To make content of value. Be it informative like here tonight, be it levity during the week. Content of value because you have value. All of this has to be worthy of one more pour, right? Those of you who've come back, those of you who've called this place home, those of you who've yet to decide that but will. I hope to see you guys again. I'll be back here at the same time, 8 to midnight, doing my best to make content worthy of you. Cheers, friend. Alright, what shenanigans and chicanery might we get up to, friends? Come and see. And I will endeavor mightily to make it a decision you don't regret. Until then, as ever, I wish you marvelous evenings, mornings, wherever ye be, and I'll see you on the other side.